Namaste, everybody. Welcome to another seminar hosted by Toronto Index Studies Toronto. This is being held under the auspices of the Hindu Heritage Month, which has been declared as a Heritage Month by the province of Ontario in Canada. Today, the topic of our talk is collective memories in our ancient heritage. With the rich Indian or deep Indian antiquity, the rich Indian heritage of keeping live human libraries and oral traditions has served as a bridge for earlier memories, including the pre-quaternary hazards experienced by humans. This is particularly some of the examples are the knowledge of the Vedas, the antiquity of festivals, various traditions, and spiritual experiences. And not to mention the memory of the great flood found around the world. Our speaker today is Rupaji Bhati. We welcome her. This is the third time she's presenting on our forum here. She's an architect and a professor and loves to decode puzzles from Indic Sanskrit texts, especially pertaining to astronomy. She is presently engaged in authoring two books, The Agastya Code and The Tale of Three Cities, Lanka, Avanti, and Kurukshetra. Rupaji, yeah, you may take over now. Thank you.
Okay, so today's talk is about the collective memory of quaternary times, that is the late quaternary times, late pre-quaternary times in Indian heritage and traditional systems. Basically, we always see that we have always known this fact that Indians have been very consistent in keeping the memories of Rig Veda intact in the same manner in a purest form. And this has been the tradition with the Brahmanas also and the Pratishakyas also. And the whole memory was taken into in a very consistent way, and it came to us in a very original form until we started with the Devanagari and before that Brahmi script. And with the help of the script writing, when we started gathering all the knowledge in the book form or in the Talapatri forms, probably the oral traditions were diminishing because of different social and traditional conditions around. But still, we have these memories in the form of educational systems. Still, we are keeping them intact in today's time also. And we see that there are two schools in Kerala, one in Benares, which are keeping this tradition of memorizing and keeping these memories intact as it is in the purest form, in the original form, and have not completely given up to the new technology, what we have today. So these memory of quaternary times is a worldwide phenomenon. It is not that only we are keeping these memories of flooding. Basically, this is the major interesting part of the whole world, which remembers the recent memory of flooding. So this was happening during Dwarka flooding also, which was experienced worldwide. And before that also during the Younger Dryas period, and also during the late 12,000 BC, around those times also, we have seen such catastrophic things happening. And the coastal areas definitely have these ethnographic memories. But these memories fade away until they are being recognized and until they are being memorized in some or the other form. So until they are there in the scriptures, which has come down to us, now we all do not memorize them, and therefore we don't have that knowledge. Supposingly, during our childhood, if we had memorized all these things and we had these libraries inside our brains, we would have been very much able to connect with the new sciences, and we can then always have that intention to connect with what had happened. So now we are completely bereft of that knowledge. And now whatever is being researched by the uh, researchers, Western researchers, for instance, and they are researching very well, of course. I always appreciate that, and I would appreciate that they go very deep into the texts, manuals of Indic scriptures, and they bring out facts in a very proper manner, of course. But the fitting of the timeline is very different of what we think today in our times, with the help of different sciences. So they don't take much of the account of the sciences um, that are present in our times. So this quaternary times flooding myth, and the oldest one is being carried by, the research was being carried by the American uh, Society. And they found that the Aboriginal stories of lost islands match up with underwater finds in Australia. So these Australian Aboriginals, they remember certain places around the coastal ranges where they have this memory that there were forests and uh, were predominant there, and suddenly there was a deluge and the land went away. And at least for 10,000 years, they are keeping this memory intact. So they have this uh, oral tradition going on for generations, and now they have this. And this has been researched by the American Science Group. Uh, to understand this, we also have similar kind of uh, theories and similar kind of memories in our scriptures, but we give scant glance to those things which are present there. And we just equate it with very recent phenomena like 1900 BCE or 3000 BC, not more than that. Now, what happens is that they feel that all the Vedas are being written within 700 or 800 years of span of time. All the Brahmanas and Pratishakyas also happened during the same time. Then the Mahabharata also happened during the same time, and Ramayana also happened within the vicinity of 500 and 600 years. So we have gone beyond of that, and we have the memories in the scriptures. Now we need to decode them. So one decoding of that memory was done by Sri Nilesh Orji, and there was a paradigm shift of the imaginations, and it was a kind of we were shaken of our chair, and we were brought into the notice that something is going into the Pleistocene times also. So the very near Pleistocene times which was experienced. And in that, we come across two pole star conditions. So Abhijit Brahma Rashi Ramayana reference was given by Sri Nilesh Orji. Later, I found Agastya at Mahendragiri, and that is also the Ramayana reference itself. And both of the conditions make uh, very consistent about the Ramayana happening during 12 to 13,000 BC, not later to 12,000, not earlier to 13,000. And with the help of 300 plus different seasonal analogies and things like that, uh, we he came more closer to the date 12,209 for Ram Ravan Yuddha. And there is no denying to it, because Agastya also came as a rescuer, that the event was happening during that time. The Pleistocene times, Pushya Nitahima Aruna, the shloka is there, and we can very well understand what kind of situation they were experiencing, even in uh, the Nasik area where this verse was being conceived. So overall, we have now that quaternary time, this late quaternary time, now we have this situation of Holocene and Pleistocene. Pleistocene time memory is there. So from the Holocene memory, that Dwarka flooding, we have that memory. Now we have the Pleistocene memory also, that late Pleistocene times memory also. Now people ask me many times that what was happening if the Ramayana is happening here, then where to place the Rig Veda? So Ramayana itself comes with the three Vedas inside uh, as an evidence. So all the Vedas are present. Rama is very much proficient and all the brothers are very much proficient in these Vedas. So definitely Vedas must predate Ramayana at least. So there are some apprehensions about one of the Rama is mentioned in Rig Veda also. But the next sukta comes with the Mayavan, which shows that probably he's not the Ram Dasharathi, but he's some other Rama, uh, which predates this Ramayana, of course. And Rama word comes in Rig Veda, Brahmanas, and altogether if we count 9 to 10 times, the word is presented. So we don't know which Rama is being uh, uh, located there. But overall, what we understand is that uh, that Ram is not the Ikshvaku Ram, but it is probably Mayavan. So that is a speculation. But Prithu and Vena, they are present there. So it may be the Ikshvaku only, and probably the son of Mayavan, and Mayavan is also Ikshvaku king himself. So they are very old kings which are present in Rig Veda. But are there some other memories which takes a little more step further into deeper antiquity? So we come across Kritikas. So we come across Kritikas at autumnal equinox. Then we come across Kritikas at rainy season. So all the Kritikas, that the Matrikas are named as Ambai, Dulai, and Swaha, Nityai, Abhrayanti, Meghayanti. So these are the names given to them. And Abhrayanti and Meghayanti definitely connects to the summer solstice point. And it was happening around 22,000 BC. So we have this, that Kritika Prathamam and Vishakhe Uttamam, they are Dakshinain Paryanti. And Dakshinain Uttarain word is not to be confused with Dakshinayan and Uttarayan. It is about the equinoctial point from where the Dakshinain, that is, it will be only seen in the southern hemisphere of the globe. And Uttarain means in the northern hemisphere of the globe. So that is happening during autumnal equinox because the Deva Nakshatras are Dakshinain Paryanti. So the Dev Nakshatra has now reached to autumnal equinoctial point. And from there, it is now only seen in the Dakshin Bhaga of the earth. So by that, we come to the conclusion that it was happening at autumnal equinoctial point. And it is happening during 15,000 BC. So this is the time. We also have the Kartikeya and the Kritikas summaries that now Kritikas are at autumnal equinox and the birth of Kartikeya takes place. So there is an Indra Skanda Sambad also in Mahabharata, a very famous one. So Indra means to unda, that is to drop, and Skanda means to hop. So with the help of this situation of Indra is coming down and Skanda is coming up, and this is the situation of vernal equinox and autumnal equinox by which the Kritikas and Kartikeya, that is a Vishaka. Vishak is another name of Kartikeya here. So such memories are also present in story forms, and these are the pointers of more deeper antiquities. So we need to segregate how to understand single kritikas only, and there we can definitely come up with different cardinal points for kritikas. So these are the deeper memories of late quaternary times. Now we come to a very interesting memory. I will go to the Mukham thing later, where the 28 nakshatra system was there and how Kritika was at vernal equinox. So this is the previous cycle talk, which is being recorded in Taittiriya Brahmana in Anuvak 1 only. So Kritikas have experienced 26,000 years of cycle, and we have this memory very much intact in our scriptures. Now we come to the ethnographic memory and a memory from Gautami Mahatmya. There it says that, again, the same story is there, birth of Agni, Kartikeya, and all these Saptarishis who had abandoned the wives, now they give birth to 6 Agnis and they coagulate and become Kartikeya. And Kartikeya again gives them the position back so that they can be revered as Kritikas. So this is the story. And in that story, it says that you all go to Ganges, you all go to Ganga, River Ganga, and you take bath in Ganga and Gautami. And after that, you will again regain your chastity. So this was the story with the Gautami River, and this Gautami River is known as Gomti in today's time and is one of the tributary of Ganges, which is a monsoon-fed river also. And this happens to be on the latitude of 28.6 degrees, and at that point of time, Agastya was seen on that latitude during the autumnal time. So it says that, and the story also goes beyond that, during the Kartik month, whoever take bath in Gomati River and Ganga River, they get the Punya Phala. So such ethnographic memories are also there. Geographical memories are also there. So this is the hydronymy memory that is associated with the river Gomati. And its importance is because of that latitude where the Agastya was rising and setting. So that was the area where Agastya was seen. But the Kritikas will be seen from all across pan-India. But this was the major importance. And here the actual precision of Agastya and vernal equinoxes of the precision of equinoxes of the astriums, they both got clubbed in. And this is how such memories are present in the Pan-India. So in the Pan-India, we also see different type of pushkarams that is related to Jupiter. And each year, with the Jupiter's transit, we can see that different rivers are associated with, and you have to go there and take bath. So this was a kind of, probably they did it because, so that they can, all the sages, those who will be reaching those rivers, they can have a kind of a conference like what we are doing today, and they can have the exchange of knowledge, and this way all the pan-India has a similar kind of knowledge. So these pushkarams, these Agastya Tirthas, these Vindhyavasini Tirthas were of such importance. Kumbhas, Kumbh Melas, Singhasta, these are all because so that these all sages can come in together and they can have the exchange of knowledge, what they have gathered all the year. So such Gautami Mahatmya and the hydronymy memory of Kritika coincides with the Shatapatha Brahmana very nicely. So the Shatapatha Brahmana says that the Kritikas are rising in the east. So that is happening around what I showed the latitude also, which coincided there to almost, this is like, you can see, this is the time between 2595 to 3555 BC. So you can see that this is the time during 3000 BC when the Kritikas were exactly rising at the east. And this has been uh, uh, seen by Sri Nilesh Obji, and it is present in one of his blogs also. So one can refer that. So with the Voyager simulation, it was rising exactly at the east during 3000 BC. It has nothing to do with the vernal equinox here. It is the observation made by the sages. Now, something very interesting is that during this time, when the Kritikas are rising in the east, the other memory is also present there. And it says that the Gautama Rahugana, now Gautami and Gautama, you can always correlate here also. The Gautama Rahugana and Videga Mathava followed this Agni, which is nothing but the equinoctial point or the Agni rising in the east. They followed that, and he was burning along all the rivers. Now it is not saying one river, that Saraswati cannot be, just Saraswati cannot be associated here. All the rivers in the east, so all the Himalayan rivers which were coming down, like Yamuna, Ganga, and other rivers, tributaries were coming down. They all were drying up. And again, this is concluded with one more information, that it was not burned by the Agni Vaishwana. So the drying of ocean or drying of river is not associated with the Vaishwanara Agni, that is the real Agni. It is not related with that. So something else is drying up. So what can dry up? So when you go into different researches on river morphologies during the Elgin times, you will find that the rivers were frozen and the banks were coming to more higher level. Because of the snows, snows were taking almost a toll of half a kilometer, almost 500 meters. And because of that, the river shrinked because of such cold conditions, all the rivers were shrinking. And this is what the memory Shatapatha Brahmana is carrying. Apart from this, Shatapatha also carries the earlier memory of Sapta Rishis. Here only in the same story where the Kritikas and Sapta Rishis are mentioned, these are mentioned in the Shatapatha also. Now you will find that in the Shatapatha Brahmana, it is, the sages are saying that these Sapta Rishis were known as Riksha. So the previous memory is also with them, with the Shatapatha Brahmana people. So how old the Sapta Rishis can be, you can very well imagine. So these are the memories of late Quaternary and almost Pleistocene times, the upper Paleolithic times, and more older period of time memories are there. Now going back to memory of the spring equinox of Kritikas in Tetere Brahmana, which is very similar to what we saw in Shatapatha Brahmana. So in Shatapatha Brahmana, we saw that it is rising near east. So it is the memory just after the memory of Tetere Brahmana. They are almost clubbing up, and within the vicinity of 1000 years, they are being written. So there is a continuity of keeping the memories. There is no break in the past to keep the memory, but these gaps are little more wider because all shorter memories cannot be kept, and they were keeping the major memories, what was happening. So they are not keeping that for all 960 years The Kritikas now came to this position, now to this position, now to this position. No, not in that fashion, but the broader age gaps were kept, and the proper memory which was hitting them in some way or the other, like the last glacial maximum was hitting them. So that memory was coming in, and those memories were kept in a very consistent way. Now going back to, when we go back to 28,260, that is almost 29,000 BCE. This is quite older memory, and people may think that now where to place again Rig Veda, because already Brahmanas are so old, so how old Rig Veda can be. So I'm not touching today Rig Veda, but a part of Rig Veda I will be touching, and that is the memory of King Brihadratha. So King Brihadratha's time is again very unique, because he is observing not only the new year in Magha, which can happen in 8,000 BCE, and in the previous cycle 34,500 BCE also. So where to place King Brihadratha? Because King Brihadratha uh, takes names of Mandhata, Yavanashva, Trasadasyu, and some more kings which are not present in the genealogy of Ikshvaku lineage also. So Sudyumna, Indradyumna, these names are there. And surprisingly, these names are quite associated with something happening geographically. But it is not taking the name, he is not taking the name of Bhagirathi. He is not taking the name of those who have changed the course of history to bring the Ganga down to earth, and again filling the ocean is a memory previous to the flood. Previous to the flood memory. In fact, now he is creating the flood. Now Bhagirathi is bringing the Ganga, and he's trying to fill the ocean, and now there can be flooding of the coastal regions. Now this memory goes back to, why it goes back to 34,500 BC. So it goes back to 34,000 BC because of the eustatic and geohazards observed by King Brihadratha. So he is visualizing that all the oceans are drying. So he doesn't say one ocean is drying, that is the outer ocean. He says all the oceans are drying. Mahavarna Shoshanam. So whatever he is visualizing, he's telling. He's telling that the pole star has gone quite away from the pole point. The rivers are shrinking. The oceans are drying up. And in such a remorseful condition, he wants to get away into sannyasa and like that. Now, the Shakayanya, the one with whom he is having the dialogue in Maitrayani Upanishad, this instance is from Maitrayani Upanishad. So there the Shakayanya, he is not denying whatever he has said, but he says that you have to come out of this and get back into the Raja Dharma, or the kind of, he has to leave the remorseful condition and kind of come back to life again. So whatever he is observing is not fictitious. Whatever he is observing is happening. So if it is happening during 8,000 BC, that time the rivers, the ocean level was rising. And during 34,000 BCE only, that was steeply falling down. And within few thousand years, it has gone to 120 meters down, what we find in during the last glacial maximum time. That time it has come to the level minus 120 meters. So I could place Brihadratha only in this period of time, because if I have to place it in 8000 BC, then he should remember his predecessor Rama also. And we are placing Rama already during 12,000 to 13,000 BC. So this is not happening here. So Ramayana is definitely seeing a few different aspects of climatology, but Brihadratha is saying completely opposite of that. So that is what brought to the consensus that it is happening during 34,000 BC. And you can see that this is the time within 1,000 years of time, there was a steep decline. So the memory of ocean drying, which came to him from his predecessors, were correct, and he was also observing the same phenomena, and he's noting them down. So this Brihadratha king is present in the first mandala and 10th mandala, and there he is fighting with the Yadus and Turvasus. He's completely barricading them, and he's not making them to enter towards the Saptasindhu region. Why I'm saying Saptasindhu region? Because in Ramayana, Bharata remembers when he crosses Ikshumati river, he is not saying Saraswati there, he's saying Ikshumati river, and Ikshumati is one of the tributary of Saraswati. So prominently Saraswati name doesn't come, but Ikshumati comes there in Ramayana. And he says that our forefathers used to live here. So the Ikshvakus used to live in the Kurukshetra region when he's crossing Ikshumati. And that is why Ikshu, the Ikshvaku lineage name comes from that river itself. The river of reeds, probably the sugar canes, or that is why the name comes up. And that memory is also there, and that memory he's sharing. So we understand that King Brihadratha, this Brihadratha can be no one other than the Ikshvaku king himself. So basically Rigveda is completely dominated by the Bharat Purus and the Purus, and also the Ikshvakus. So they are the cousins of the very early lineages. So what I discussed is that this was the encoded knowledge by Brihadratha, and it's very consistent with the timing of Magha and with the timing of when all the oceans, that is the inland oceans, were also reducing. And you can go to the research papers where Khavaelian Caspian Sea, and how it was shrinking down to, and how much basins were created during that time, and how much the ocean reduced during that time. And in the later times when the flooding happened, how the Caspian Sea itself flooded Black Sea, and again the Black Sea flooded the Aegean Sea. So there is a complete chronology which is present in our scriptures. Moreover, if we are going back too much into that time, how these people were knowing these places? The question will always arise into our minds. And people ask me also that did they have Vimana or something like that so that they can reach to that area like Black Sea or Caspian Sea and all the inland seas, what they were visualizing. But I would say that they were themselves rathas. So the first word, that ratha, which comes in Rig Veda, is the memory of your own body. So you are the ratha and the soul is the rathin. So this is the concept given in the Rig Veda. So all the Rig Vedic chariots are flying. So the chariot is not the word for ratha. Any moving entity can be called ratha according to the Sanskrit terminology. So we come to understand that people were highly moving or spreaded till Black Sea or Aegean Sea and the Caspian Sea which is the probable name for the Kashyapas, probably. That is a speculation again for the Kashyapa Mir, or the Kashmir should be the Kashyapa people, or the Caspian Sea people should be the Kashyapa people. So the King Brihadratha's time, the epoch of Magha, is also a very old memory that is very consistent with all the internal evidence. And there we find that this is just from my paper, and there I showed that how these late quaternary transgressions were happening, and later the flood myths, how they emerged. And not only the Australian aboriginals remember that, but the people residing by the Caspian and the Black Sea, they also remember the flooding myth, and flooding memory is almost very much universal. This is the recent memory, but we are keeping the earlier memories with us. This is something very interesting to understand. So how we keep the memories of such far off places? Were the people moving too much, or were they concentrated? The pan India was too much lengthy. Had a quite mm, from Black Sea uh, till the Sapta Sindhus, and people were knowing faraway places, because Sugriva's atlas, the talk taken by Srini Shovji, it shows that Sugriva knew almost the whole of the earth. The whole globe was known to him. All the places, what he is describing is very consistent. So I went to the study of the haplogroup H, which comes from the origin comes from 45,000 BC, and around that time you can see the spread. The spread is still the Caspian, the Black Sea, the Aegean Sea, and till the Spain, Gibraltar. So this haplogroup and its spread suggest that people were moving, and the groups were formed till that end, and later also they carried this haplogroup, but this haplogroup is very much Indian haplogroup and concentrated now south of Vendia. So you can see the portion of Bay of Bengal south of India. And the latest find corroborates that this haplogroup uh, remains in India from 65,000 BC. So its origin is not exactly 45, but it is very deeply rooted haplogroup of India, which is present from 65,000 BC, before present, and is found in one of the Chettinad uh, group of people from South India. So these people, the southern people, that southern Ikshwakus also is the later memory. Now we have that there were the southern Ikshwakus also. So the same Ikshwakus were spreaded, or those time people were going till Gibraltar, and they had this memory of all the inland oceans also. So this also corroborates the condition of Brihadratha quite very well. The other memories about the volcanic eruption is also associated with Brihadratha, which is in the one of the mandalas of Rig Veda, where he is being said as the Vritahana, and he's kind of uh, uh, fighting with the clouds. So the Vritra is nothing but a cloud by the Niruptakaras. It is said to be the clouds, which probably after the volcanic eruption, the conditions of Toba were so fearful that all the humanity was about to vanish. So such kind of situation also, a very small situation must have persisted during 36,000 BC. That is again the Maghas time itself. So all the factors from the Rigvedic memories or the Maitreya Upanishad memories, it all corroborates to the timing of 34,500 BC, almost 34 to 36,000 years of the memories present. Now, let us understand this Jyot Hazard, which is the drying of ocean, with respect to other myths also. So the Puranic myths are there, like Gautami Mahatmya I told, that is the hydronymy myth is there, and that is the ethnographic memory, in fact. So these are the factual things, not myths, but until we decode them, they are called myths. That is what I understand. So the other myths are associated with Agastya drinking ocean. So we already saw that Brihadrati is already seeing that the ocean level is going down. Now we come across Agastya starts drinking ocean. So this is also receding of ocean memory. Now you will find it very amazing that these two memories, the Agastya drinking memory, Brihadratha seeing the drying of ocean, that is a very factual kind of memory. Other than that, Parshuram reclaiming Kerala and Malabar lands. This is again one memory, ethnographic memory. So all these memory points us to the receding of ocean memories. And this is something amazing about the Indian scriptures, uh, that an Indian tradition, of course, that they have kept this memory before the flooding memories. So these memories are earlier to the flooding memories, and the whole world is having this recent memory of flooding, but we have the memories of receding of oceans also. So how this can be possible that we are having the memories from 34,000 BCE or more prior to that probably, and we are not yet able to decode all those memories. So how can they keep all these memories? So, and after that, we come that, okay, Agastya drank the ocean, and now Bhagirathi has this uh, task of bringing the Ganga to the sons of Sagara. Now, bringing the Ganga to sons of Sagara means that the Ganga had already shrunk due to the Elgin times, and now she's again gaining her width, and now she can reach till the Sagar's son's ashes and bless them. And now Bhagirathi is bringing Ganga again back to refill the ocean, what Agastya had drank. So there is a connection of all the stories, right from the Brihadratha, Kritikas, then Agastya drinking ocean, then Bhagirathi start filling the ocean. So there is a continuity. And in between, do we remember where Agast reached and from where again he's coming back towards Mahendragiri during the 12,000 BCE? So we have the memory that Agast leaves Kurukshetra. He goes to heaven. Now he is not seen from Kurukshetra, and this comes in Gemini Brahmana. So there is a continuity of all the ancient memories, ancient to the recent flood memories, which is talked upon as the oldest memory of the Australian Aboriginals 10,000 years ago. So we have more earlier memories with us, but how to bring these facts as research papers are the big questions, and how the Western world will take these factual positions and try to see our civilization as one of the oldest. That is the biggest question that remains. To understand how we have kept such huge libraries in our human minds. So let us understand what is the memory capacity of a human being. So many of them frequently ask me that it is impossible to have these many texts in this small brain. So what is the capacity of human brain, and how our sages, in fact, how our Veda Patashalas in today's time also are making our small little kids from 5-year-old to memorize the Rig Veda Kanthastha in a Kanthastha way, and their Padapathas also, their Kramapathas also, and their Pratishakyas also, the Tatiriya Shakha also, and other Shakhas also, which are now only on the fingertips. These were enumerated in the enumerated form, and they were in a very large fraction form was present before some time. But due to the loss of oral tradition and today's social conditions, we have lost all these texts completely. So all these human, it depends upon how we gauge the human brain. What is the kind of memory capacity of a human being? And you will be surprised that 4.7 bits per synapses and about 1 trillion bytes, that is 1 TB, 125 trillion synapses gives us 1 TB, and that gives us an amount of 74 terabytes capacity uh, to our brain. So our brain has 74 TB capacity where different memories can be stored. You can gauge it, or you can compare it with your mobile phone or your laptop. If you have 1 TB, I was said by the laptop seller that if you have 1 TB, whole of your life, whatever you find to store in it would be enough. So our brain has 74 TB capacity just in the cerebral cortex alone. So other things we have not explored yet. But now, because of the social conditions, the technology, um, we have reduced the sense of memorizing. We have completely gone away from our traditions of repetitive memorizing. So supposingly you go to a place for 3 days, 4 nights, and you just go around the places in a very quick way, and you don't absorb the the shots. Uh, you just are clicking the pictures, but you're not absorbing into your brain or mind. You're not visualizing that and absorbing it in a very proper manner. So that will not remain in your memory until you see to the pictures again. Then you recognize that, okay, and we went there also, we went there also. And next time when you go again for 3 days, 4 nights, again, you will forget so many places. And again, it will, with a very small shots, you will be able to remember that. But the kind of memorizing technique uh, that was different in our tradition. That was a deliberate memorizing tradition, so that the human libraries, the live scrolls, I should say, the humans themselves were the live scrolls. They were the live human libraries. So that we need to understand that why we kept the earlier memories also with us, how we kept all these earlier receding memories with us. just because of the tradition of keeping uh, the, the text, which we are saying today, the text, but in the oral tradition, the keeping of the records in intact in that manner only, without diverting or without interpolating. So when the script comes, the interpolation begins. The the new mind will think, oh, um, how is it possible that Chatra was happening in Sharad in Ramayana? It is not possible. So if the direct shloka is there, then they will write Chatra in Vasantam. So that kind of interpolation happens when the script comes and the new mind is engaged in reasoning. Oh, this is not possible, so let us correct this. So this kind of thing happened, and in the course of time, for say 100 years, all the scriptures of the India, because of the Mahakumbhas and the congregations happening in different times in a year, that memories were replaced. Those memories got replaced, and suddenly you see the text in a very new form. But that was not happening in the oral tradition. So that is something very unique. So now compare the development of human skull also and the cranial capacity. Now I'm taking you back to the Sogdian culture and Acheulean culture, Madrasian culture. These are all are archaeological finds, which says that the human occupation in Indian subcontinent around the Sushoma, around the Saraswati, across this all these pan 21 rivers of Rigveda, people were residing there, and they were developing this, and the human brains were developing due to the exercises, and due to the exercises of the mouth, the talu formation, all these formations, and how to produce the sound, the specific sounds. They were exercising it from lakhs of years. We cannot say that it just happened 4,000 years ago and the language came in. Uh, People ask me that Sanskrit language is such a sophisticated language. It is so mathematical. It is so organized language. How can it prevail from 34,000 BC? It is impossible to have a language during that time when people are not wearing anything. Probably not wearing, probably wearing, we don't know. But the scriptures are saying in different stories. They are telling the truth that they were present during 34,000 BC. You agree or not? They are there. So these exercises were explored by our sages too. And the result perhaps is with the deliberation over memorizing and skills used to memorize. So without the aid of writing or the mechanical devices, but in the motorical fashion, like using swara, accents, and hand gestures. With the help of that, this is something motorical, and that makes you memorize things more easily. So people remember even post Panini, people remember even in today's time, they kanthastha the whole Panini Sutra. They completely memorize without any break. They can tell all the sutras, 4,000 sutras. They can tell all those 2,000 dhatu pathas in one go, in one stretch. They can, without any interruption, they can say. So how our little children and the Sanskrit people who are completely engaged into the Sanskrit studies remember that? And why we don't remember a small poem by Tennyson, but we remember Baba Black Sheep. So they found that, our sages found that the age of grasping was the early ages, like 4 to 5 year old, and that is the time the libraries can be created. So they created the library there because they knew that what is the capacity of brain. They definitely knew, not in the terabyte system. This is the new research, but definitely they knew that the most easiest grasping age is the 4 to 5 years old, and that time they made them memorize. By the time of 12 and 13 years old, the children would be memorizing all the Vedas, Brahmanas, Pratishakyas, the grammar sutras, the Dhatu Patas, everything is memorized. Now the whole library is created. When the time comes of reasoning, that time those pages get open, those neurons work, and we get those uh, uh, the earlier memories surfacing, and that time the reasoning, the philosophies, and those mm, uh, exchange of knowledge and increment to that knowledge began, used to begin. So this is what I have observed in all these years, and I tried why and how they remember and how they do that. So what were they recording with the help of language? So they were recording with the help of language the facts, whatever they were visualizing, Dasharajanya war, they're reaching some river, all the rivers, the river-based geography and everything. So, and with that, what other hazards were happening, that was also observed. And this way, they were keeping the memories live. So today we discussed about Brihadratha and Kritikas and Agastya. The whole chart is about the Agastya only as a sheet anchor. And this is how I will conclude that yes, we do carry the memories. In fact, from 2 lakh year old, and these memories are very much present in Rigveda. If one needs to research properly, they will find the astronomical linchpins there to locate where these can be like seen as the earliest memories in our scriptures. So thank you so much.
Prasadji, go ahead and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupaji, for the excellent talk. Very innovative topic, and lots of research involved, I'm sure. Quick question. So this Agastya, looks like it's a star and so on, and seems like it's spanning multiple generations or even thousands of years. Is it one Agastya or is it multiple Agastyas observing all things?
It appears that there was a group. Actually, it is a precursor to Gotra system, I would say. Gotra system is very new, but these people were the group people, like Atri group, Agastya group, and Brigu group, Vishwamitra group, and Vashishta group. So these are the epithets. It appears to me the main keeper of that part. The studies, they were done by the groups, in fact. And I would say that there was an Agastya group also, and it was having the lineages, it was having the heirs in the following generation time. And this group was very particular. It was following Agastya star, and it reached to Kurukshetra. Again, they were following the path. And that pattern can be seen with the help of last glacial maximum times, when during 19,000 BC, Agastya is crossing Vindhya. And I have given that in the earlier talk also with Indic Academy. So that is already decoded that during 19,000 BC, they were coming down towards southern tropical regions. And it was very obvious because that memory entwined with the last glacial maximum, because those areas were getting non-habitable. So they need to proceed towards south, more towards Gangetic plains in the east, southeast side, and towards south of Narmada. And Narmada became more habitable that time. So Narmada is having Bhimbatika, and we have all those clear pictures that yes, these Pleistocene time conditions were prevalent and people were moving. So Agastya people definitely were moving, and Agastya is the main priest of Ikshvakus in Rigveda. So it is very interesting that he's also moving, and the Ikshvakus are also moving till Gibraltar and other places. They are the very deep-rooted people of India. And in the genealogy also, you can find that Ikshvaku is very earlier in time king. So hope this serves, Prasadji.
Yeah,
They
it's
were
good.
the group. Yeah, they were the group people. The Gotras came very later in probably 3000, 4000 BC, post Mahabharata. That became more precise and more specific. They became more specific for their own group. So earlier they could have been different haplogroups, but following Agastya cult or the Vishwamitra cult or Vashishta cult and likewise. Different peoples were conglomerating into those groups to find something relevant of that.
Okay, we
Shrupaji
have.
claiming pole star at 78 degree, but it should be 90 degree. So 12 degree is 24 moon diameter away, of course. Why would anyone consider it pole star as it will be found rotating through the night? So at Mahendragiri, you will find that whosoever has asked the question, at Mahendragiri, you will find that during uh, its transit from the meridian, it is only seen 2 degrees above. So दो अंगुल ऊपर ही दिखाई थोड़ा सा ही ऊपर दिखाई दे रहे हैं. It is almost touching the horizon, and when it crosses the meridian, then only it is seen. So it is almost behaving like a pole star, not pole star exactly. It is behaving like a pole star at 8 degree north. That is the Mahendragiri latitude. So at 8 degree north, it is having almost 4 degrees. It will have almost 4 degree height. So that much of height they can see it almost like grazing on the horizon, little up on the horizon. But with the help of a refractive index, that can uplift the star condition more. But overall, it will be very near to south. So supposingly, people of pan India people who are not able to see Agastya till Mahendragiri, and after reaching Mahendragiri, they are seeing. So for them, it is a pole star only. So this is a visual thing, of course, and it is a near pole star condition. That is the best, very near pole star, which has been used by the navigation navigators also. So that always served near pole star. Even in today's Gujarati compass, you can see that it is only 5 degrees away from the southern pole star. So the older memory is still carried on, of 12,000 BC. It is still being carried in the compass with them. Other question is, how can passage from same text Taittiriya Brahmana be dated? They continued. Actually, Taittiriya Brahmana continued till 10,000 BC. And from the Holocene time, that got distracted, probably because of more invasions. Invasion, I would not say invasion, migration of people, different type of cultures were evolving during that time. So the Brahmanas probably got abandoned with more additions into it. But we see that the Kritikas with the 27 Samhita, Taittiriya Samhita comes up with 27 nakshatra system again. So that continued in some or the other way. Taittiriya continued till the Neokritika, which happened during 3000 or 2000 some BC. how can Rupaji be so sure that passages about Agastya are about Agastya and not Agastya sage? Yeah, so this evidence comes from Parashara Tantra. Parashar Tantra says that after Agastya crosses Vindhya, he goes to south, he lives there, he rises there and sets there. So it is only Parashara Tantra which gives us the clear picture that this sage who crossed Vindhya was not Muni, but it was Rishi. Rishi is about the race. It is Niruktakar says it is Rasi, Raju, Rishi. So the Agastya was Rishi, and you will find amazing that Agastya as Rishi is being mentioned for Mahendragiri. Agastya as Muni is mentioned, that is sage, who is not speaking much. Muni means who keep on. Those group is found are found in Nasik area where Rama meets Agastya in physical sense. So Rama is meeting Agastya there, and he's a physical Agastya. But the segregation Valmiki has done is astounding. He uses the word Rishi for the Mahendragiri Parvata Agastya. And the same thing is found in Parashara Tantra. It says that it rises and sets in south. So this is the condition during the 12,000 BC when it crossed Chidambaram latitude, and after that it is always seen there. So from Mahendragiri you can always see Agastya. It will never elope from that latitude because of its declination, you know better because you asked me about the 78 degrees.
We have one from Ashish Mahabal. You mentioned Sanskrit to be over 4,000 years old. What form was it in? The Sanskrit we know is much more recent, isn't it? The one codified by Panini, or did I hear it wrong?
No, no. Before Panini also there were many grammarians, and Panini himself mentions that his predecessors also. And probably those predecessors were also having their predecessors. So when you look at Valmiki's Ramayana, it is in a very neo form. People would say that it has been written only 400 years ago. But all the internal evidence points to 12,000 BC. So this language in this form, in the Valmiki Ramayana, whatever shlokas we are reading, whatever Sanskrit we are reading, is very much in the same Sanskrit, because the Sanskrit is something like, it is based on roots, Sukting, Tingata Padam, and all those formation from that root, how much formations of word can happen from that root. So that was known from Valmiki time, and even prior to Valmiki time, because Maitrayani Upanishad is being memorized in Maitrayani Upanishad system, and it is memorized of the 34,000 BC. So the dialogues are from 34,000 BC, but it is memorized in the new this form, Sanskrit form. But when you see the Maitrayani Samhita, the whole book, you will find five kind of swaras there. So you find only 3 types of accents in Rig Veda, which are used with the hand gestures and motorized form of memorization. But you will be amazed to find some 5 kind of there in Maitrayani system. And we don't know how that can be pronounced. So there are different type of W mark under the words. So that is something very amazing, and we don't know how to pronounce that. We have forgotten. So that the Shakha, which must have been keeping this memory alive, is completely gone. So there were so many genocides of Hindus in the south happened, and Brahmanas were killed, and those who were proficient in those shakas were killed, and things vanished from at least India. We don't have those 2 accents, how to pronounce that. So something which was which came into the script form also, but now we don't know how to use that swara. Somebody asked, pole star means should be fixed. No, not pole stars. Pole point are fixed. Pole stars are in the vicinity of pole point or on the pole point. On the pole point, it is only Dhruva. This time it comes almost Thuban. Thuban comes very near to the pole point. So pole point is fixed. Pole star can move around the pole point. But this is the, one should understand that we cannot take out the star with our hands and pull it and pull to the, those are natural observations. Na? आप अपने घर में भी किसी को बांध के वैसे रखेंगे तो ही आप उसको फिक्स्ड देख सकते हैं. Everything is moving, and with the proper motion they are moving away and they're coming back to that point because of the Earth's tilt also. So there are so many factors which makes the pole star going away from the pole point, and again it can come back towards the pole point also in the next cycle. So to say that it should be fixed and that analogy has to be assumed, it is not good. Pole point is fixed, of course. So that is a Brahma Rashi, Vishuddhasya, Shuddhasya, Paramarshaya. All are revolving around the pole point only. So because Vega is also 5 degrees away, 85 degrees. And in the northern hemisphere, we can, southern hemisphere में तो अगस्त बिल्कुल grazing कर रहा है तो हमको लगेगा कि वो pole star ही है. लेकिन नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर में क्या करेंगे जब पोल स्टार से इतना दूर है. तो ब्रह्म राशि, विशुद्धश्च, शुद्धाश्च, परमर्शय, all are revolving around the pole point only. They are circumambulating pole point. That pole point is dhruvam sarve pradakshinam. Dhruvam is neuter there. It is not masculine. It is neither feminine. So it is a neuter. So one has to understand the use of Sanskrit there itself in that shloka itself of Ramayana. So one has to look into each word and try to understand what it is trying to say. There was a great debate in Bharati with Parishad also. And people are completely ignorant about many things. And I'm surprised. Many of them are great Sanskrit scholars, but they are not able to decode. Even they are finding the bhashyas also of the Westerners, everyone is saying, and still they are not identifying. The most important thing is Sri Aryan Iyengarji, who is completely in the denial mode that Brahma Rashi is the Vega. In fact, in his book only, he is under apprehension that probably Brahma Rashi is Vega, but it is mentioned with the Brahma star also, then it can be Brahma, it can be Vega. He himself is confused in his own book, Parashara Tantra. But he is only giving the clue. And he is in the denial mode because of something else. Because of what he must have felt for, I don't know. But for something else, he is completely in the denial mode. So science don't go ahead with such kind of notions. We have to be open-minded for many things.
Any evidence about that Noah's Ark and that flood and something written in our timelines?
Now, this is something very interesting. Noah's Ark and flooding and Manu's Ark, Manu's time flooding. In fact, we have seen so much of flood in the previous time. All the flood cannot be taken for just one flood which Noah was experiencing. So that is something very interesting. If you remember the graph that was having too many dips. So there had been many flooding in the past, and sometimes they say that Puranas have more deeper antiquity memories. They are carrying, because of the ethnographic memory they have, they are carrying different memories with them. So something which is happening around the Black Sea and the pouring of the Caspian Sea into it, that is the latest memory the Europeans have. And they have the very recent memories. But to equate it with our flood memories, it appears to me, as I said, that the exercise of brain that created the cranial capacity of the brain, and the brain size was getting bigger and bigger because of the exercises only. It's not that something was happening all of a sudden apne aap ho raha tha. So yeah, they were doing some kind of exercise, and because of that. So very early memories are also there, because for 8-9 lakh years, the Sonian culture is there, the Madrasian culture is there. So the continuation of the Homo sapiens appears, Homo erectus appears. And I don't know how these Homo erectus may have given the information to Homo sapiens who came out of Africa. I don't know. There should be a multiple origin theory. We were originally us only. We don't look like Africans, and probably we evolved in our subcontinent. They evolved in there. We don't know what kind of researches in the future will come, and we will come across such things. But to equate both the memories is very difficult for me, because it appears to me the Puranic, the Varaha avatar and all those things. And remembering the human forms in different forms, it appears to me like as something very unbelievable things are already present there. So the Noah and the Manu pulling the Saptarishis with on a fish or something like that. They have some semblance, but they are different, of course. We cannot equate their timeline to us. Also, those areas were inhabitable, means they were not non-habitable kind. So mostly the split that comes in the mtDNA also is 65 to 70,000 BCE, and they were the Indian mtDNA is only that the maternal part has gone to Eurasia to populate that area. So probably our memories also went there. But somehow the Black Sea memory is the recent memory of flood, and their association of that time is more uh, more accurate, I think, for them, not for us. We have different type of memories in our scripture.
So we can conclude the session here. And so thank you very much for taking the time to present on your research and your work. It's very enlightening and very interesting. And thank you to the audience as well for taking the time to participate and enjoy this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.